All right. You're still with me? We're still up
Yes,
on
sir.
the chat room here. And if you guys got any questions there for Jack. And Jack, I'll bring you back. It's, sometime this next week, couple of weeks this month, I'll bring you back on here so we can get any kind of updates on it. And I've got more links on my site. I'll do an email out. I'll put together an email with this show to make people aware of it and aware of the necessity for backing it. For we got to put some pressure on the legislature, and Jack's got all of those connections for you, the email addresses and everything. So the next email I put out, Jack, I'm going to send it to everybody on your whole email list. Because I don't need just to talk to the peons of the street. We need to reach what we did in New Mexico. I mean, we talked to the governor. We sat down in the governor's office. It's
What we're dealing with here is a well-intentioned governor. I have no doubt of her patriotism. I'm proud of her. The problem I have is that the advice that she's getting from her subordinates does not support the state guard. For example, she gets input from the director of public safety, who is very much in favor of this. But then she gets input from the adjutant general, the commander of the National Guard, who's in opposition. So who does she listen to? Well, we're gonna give her the opportunity with this legislation of saying, okay, the legislature has now spoken, and they have voted for this bill in both houses. If she vetoes it, then she really can't say that she's serious about border security anymore. If she signs it, then she can say, okay, Mr. Adjutant General, you work for me, here's your marching orders. If she does neither, if she just lets it sit, then under state law and under our state constitution, in the absence of the governor's signature, it still becomes law. And because this is being put through as an emergency measure, the normal 90-day waiting period does not apply. As soon as she either pocket vetoes it, or she gets overridden on her veto, or she signs it, as soon as one of those three things happens, we don't start the 90-day clock like we would for normal legislation. It becomes law that day.
Now, what about getting this passed? I mean, my show is very, very limited, Jack, unless you send it out to everybody on your list and unless people actually get involved, and they haven't been doing that. I'm blocked in libraries. I'm blocked in places. They've tapped my phones to interfere with business deals. I had one of my magazines sold for $500,000, half of it for $500,000.
We're counting on the personal networks of every person who hears this show, and the personal networks of every person who visits our website, and the personal contact lists of every person who talks to every other person. We're going directly to people. I have spoken on the phone directly with Stuart Rhodes, who is both the publisher, owner, and editor of SWAT magazine and the founder of the Oath Keepers.
Yes.
I've talked to him. He's on board with this plan. He wants us to succeed.
I just had one of the gentlemen from the board of directors there, Elias alias. He's on the board of directors. He was just on my show talking about, some of the things the Oath Keepers are doing, and I really appreciate Stuart's work. Okay,
yes,
Manny says he lived in Tucson, where Clay is located. Is it true the border unofficially has moved closer to Tucson? What's that mean?
Well, that's absolutely the case. I mean, we tell people if you're within 100 miles of the border, you're in the war zone.
But that is the conclusion that for generals, I believe, in Texas, they were hired and to assess the situation, and the border states are right there on the border, one county up, and they said we're in a war zone. This is a war, and even the federal government is telling you, oh, this is a war. Yeah, we're in a war zone. We're in a war here.
Well, that's absolutely true. That was General Barry McCaffrey, who was chief researcher for that study in Texas.
Yes.
That came out just last year. That was the Texas Department of Agriculture that sponsored the study.
Yes.
General McCaffrey and General Scales, both retired U.S. Army generals, did a strategic military assessment of Texas border security. There's a link to the report on our website. This is public knowledge. They are the ones that came out and said, look, we need to do something serious because no one is being serious right now. When you think about where the border actually is, think about where Sheriff's Deputy Louis Parole was machine gunned. This is a American commissioned law enforcement officer, uniformed in performance of his duties. He's ambushed by 5 men with illegal, fully automatic weapons, and none of them get caught. Where is the border, really? None of the people who committed what amounts to attempted murder against a law enforcement officer were able to be caught because he was on the wrong side of their border. Their border is 100 miles north of where we have the line drawn on the map. They are able to operate with impunity in that area because they have observation posts with satellite phones and high-powered encrypted radios and the best optics you can buy from Germany, all paid for with drug money. These are not drug mules that are sitting up on top of these observation posts. These are military-trained insurgents. These are guys who were either trained by the Mexican Army or by the Zetas, who were trained by the Mexican Army and by us, to operate in a coordinated military fashion. They are in radio contact with their bosses back in Mexico City. They are in radio contact with the mule trains and the strike teams on the ground, and that's what's coming across, our military strike teams. There were 5 guys that machine gunned Deputy Parole. 5 is the number of soldiers that you put into any fire team in any modern military unit. These guys have effectively created their own intelligence network inside of our country, and they are utilizing it to their advantage. They are the ones that are in charge of the border, not us. You keep hearing this term, operational control. The Border Patrol uses this when they talk about what they want to accomplish. Well, we need more money, we need more men, so that in this section of the border we can establish operational control. Well, there's 2 things that I get out of that. One, whoever it is that has operational control right now, it isn't the Border Patrol. They do not have operational control. And the second thing I get out of it is the bad guys do. Bad guys are the ones that currently have OPCON of our border in most of the southern border in Arizona, particularly in Cochise County.
Yeah, Sheriff Deaver is really, under a lot of pressure. And he's getting attacked from both sides, too, because he spoke before Congress about this situation.
Right. Now, how many deputies does he have in his county? I think it's like 27?
Something like that.
And how big is the county? The county is several 100,000 square miles. It's about the size of Rhode Island. This is a big piece of county, and county sheriffs have a lot of things to do above and beyond simply dealing with the cross-border insurgency. They have to deal with traffic violations. They have to deal with domestic violence issues. They have to provide security for elected officials. They have to do all the mundane, day-to-day law enforcement activities that every other county and city law enforcement entity has to deal with. But the difference with the State Guard would be the State Guard soldiers would be focused. They would be concentrated on the border security mission. We are not going to be sending State Guard soldiers out there to man checkpoints and stop people and ask them for their papers. We're not going to be sending State Guard soldiers out to issue traffic tickets. We're not going to be sending State Guard soldiers out there to give you tickets for putting up your tent in the wrong manner. These are going to be soldiers. Yes, they're going to be given, if the bill passes, they would have powers of arrest and detention. But that doesn't give them the power to file charges. The analogy I like to use is that the powers of arrest and detention that would be given to the State Guard would be in the same manner as we give powers of arrest and detention to security guards at the local shopping mall. Do we really want to have a situation where our soldiers have less power to arrest and detain than the guy who's picking up the shoplifter at the Walmart. No, we want to give them at least that level of authority.
Well, come on, Jack. You and I have that level of authority. I've arrested 3 or 4 people over the last 25 years.
Right. But the difference is that we would have it codified in the statute, and we'd be protected under the same protections as law enforcement officers and National Guard soldiers have under state law. They've added in that, look, you can't sue the department because one of the officers was doing his duty. You can sue if he's exceeded his authority, but not just simply because he placed you under arrest. That's the limitation that we have with citizen's arrest. Yes, you can effect a citizen's arrest, but you must be willing to accept the consequences of that if the person that you arrested decides to sue you. You have no protection. You can lose your entire life savings. You can lose your home, and I've seen that happen. If you give them the power to simply arrest and detain someone that's equivalent to that given to security guards at the local shopping mall, then they're protected against a lawsuit. That means that the State Guard soldier arrests someone coming across the border carrying a fully automatic weapon, carrying drugs, carrying God knows what else. They can hold them until the law enforcement officers of the county sheriff arrive and place them in custody. That frees up the soldier from having to do all the paperwork associated with the arrest, from having to maintain custody of the suspect through the whole chain of custody and deliver them to the... That doesn't take the soldier out of the field simply because he holds somebody. It takes him out of action long enough to hold that person for the county authority to pick them up, and then that soldier goes back to being a soldier. He doesn't have to be paid overtime because he's there as a pure volunteer. Yeah, you're going to pay him twice as much after he works 40 hours in a week? Well, he's making 0. What's twice 0? You're still paying him nothing. You're still working the border from a soldier's perspective, not from a law enforcement perspective, but you still have the power to arrest and detain if you need it.
Now, didn't you try to do something like this in Cochise County? What was ranch rescue? Tell me about that. And I had met Casey Nethercott, who got his ranch taken away from him by Southern poverty law, I guess. And this was after inviting me to come down, and evidently somebody tapped our phone because they were waiting for him when he went to buy me breakfast. But
the idea behind ranch rescue was to provide security to private landowners. We did that a lot. I was doing private security work with Casey Nethercott back in 2003, 2004. Prior to that, I was working private security for a landowner in Santa Cruz County, one county over from Cochise County, just organizing volunteers coming out. In fact, that time we went to Santa Cruz County in 2002, we went down there with Rob Crott from Soldier of Fortune magazine and a team of Special Forces, retired Special Forces operators, and we caught 300 pounds of dope coming across the San Antonio ranch right on the border. And all this was documented, and this was in actually two issues of Soldier of Fortune magazine in 2003. So, yeah, Ranch Rescue did a great job for what it was designed to do. It was never designed to be a full-scale military force because at that time it was just criminal enterprise that was coming across the border. It's a lot worse now than it was then. This has gradually escalated because nature abhors a vacuum. Now we're at the point where we have a rancher who's dead. Rob Krentz was murdered on his own ranch in Cochise County because the cartels sent a hit squad to kill him. He kept turning in information to the Border Patrol about these people coming across his ranch. Well, they didn't like being interfered with, so they killed Rob Krentz. I mean, since Ranch Rescue, it's escalated to the point where we're more like Zimbabwe was when it was Rhodesia. And in the late 70s, it had escalated to the point that we're seeing now where they're actually conducting raids across our border to kill landowners. And we now have confirmation from the Department of Justice, in their criminal case against the people who shot that Border Patrol agent in Cochise County last year.
Brian Terry?
Yeah, Brian Terry was shot not by some random security for a drug load. They were hunting law enforcement. That was a crew that had been sent across the border to target law enforcement inside the United States. These guys that got caught with those Fast and Furious guns, they were out to assassinate law enforcement. That's why they were there. And Brian Terry died because he was carrying a beanbag gun instead of an AR-15. This is documented. This is in the DOJ's case against the one guy that they did manage to catch. They are coming across to kill American law enforcement. How is this not an insurgency?
And they are also targeting the sheriff's deputies and people like Paul Barbeau, aren't they too?
Yes. We have documentation from the DOJ that confirms that the Mexican drug trafficking terrorists have alliances with the street gangs inside the USA, and that those street gangs are the ones that they are hiring as hitmen to go after U.S. law enforcement, U.S. politicians, U.S. private landowners. Hezbollah is involved in this. Hezbollah is operating with the Mexican drug cartels. How is this not an insurgency? Somebody please explain it. You have to understand, I was a political science major. I was trained as an Army officer. I know what the word insurgency means. It doesn't change its meaning to fit a political climate or agenda. This is an insurgency. There is no other way to describe it. We are going to lose our country if we don't buck up and put some troops on the fracking border.
I certainly agree with that. Of course, wouldn't somebody call you an isolationist? They got a whole list of names.
Southern Poverty Law Center has invented a new term just for me. I never heard this term used in normal conversation. I think they make up words just to fit their agenda. They have actually come out with a new term just to describe Jack Foote. I am, and I quote, a nativist extremist.
Ooh, a native. You know, we are.
They disliked me so much they had to come up with a new term for me.
They quit talking. They quit talking about me. I think they were
that before.
I think they thought they were giving me too much publicity. They haven't talked to me for a while since they tried to demonize me in the NAACP. That me and Larry Pratt, they said we were bigots.
Well, you know, I got two words for them doing that to me, Clay, and that is bring it. Because I cannot wait to see how fast they crawl back under their rock when I challenge them to a public debate. They never took me up on that challenge when I was working with Ranch Rescue. They haven't got the stones to do it now. Come on, let's debate. Bring it.
Do you tell me how your foundation works? Is this what?
How the foundation works?
Yes, sir.
There's me and a couple other guys.
Okay. Well, then you've got more than me, Jack. And you know, I'm always looking for somebody to work with. But it's like I told people when they'd call me up to ask me, well, Clay, you know of a militia I could join? I said, look, if you join a militia and there's more than 10 people in it, and you haven't known the other 9 your whole life, one of them's a Fed trying to set you up. So, the one thing I've got going for me is my organization, the Free American, is impossible to be infiltrated.
Well, what are you going to infiltrate?
Me. That's it, man. That's it. What you see is what you get, guys.
We are basically a clearinghouse for information.
Yes.
People contact us and they say, look, I want to join a militia unit or I want to join the state guard as soon as it's established. I say, fine. We put your name on the list. As soon as the legislation is passed and signed by the governor, we're going to send out a broadcast email to everybody saying, here's what happened. We now have a state guard. And as soon as they start telling us where we can go to sign up, we'll broadcast that too. What have I done wrong? I have informed people of what the legislature is doing anyway. I have informed people that I will let them know when that changes and some new development comes up. And every time they have a meeting at the state legislature talking about the state guard or talking about any other legislation, it all gets videotaped. They are one of the few state legislatures that has every committee meeting broadcast on the internet and archived for later review. You can go back to 2007 and watch stuff about what they've done in the legislature. So when you talk about what we do, what we're doing is telling people what's going on. I'm not the one that wrote the legislation. I'm not the one that convinced those senators and state representatives to do this. I'm not the I never talked to that guy Zach Taylor, who's the head of the Retired Border Patrols Officers Association. But even though I didn't talk to him, even though we've never had any conversations with him, he's in favor of the same thing we are. And somehow, us utilizing a network of personal contacts has built up to the point where now we've got Zach Taylor saying, yes, we should have a state guard. Even though none of us ever actually talked to him, he's on board.
I had Gordon Duff from Veterans Today on my show a few days ago. And he seems to be encouraged. He thinks that the military, the both retired and active duty military, are starting to be a little bit more on the patriotic side here and concerned about the same things that we are. They think that our government's just being sold out.
You know what? I got an email. We get emails from our website all the time. I got an email last night from a Marine who had served for 4 years in Iraq, in Fallujah, and other garden spots. A combat veteran. He's out of the Marine Corps now, and his first email message was to us saying, how do I join? Knowing that he would not get paid to do this, knowing that he would be probably outgunned and outmanned and outmaneuvered by these narco-terrorists that are coming across our border. Knowing the risks and knowing that no one was ever going to pay him to do it, he still wants to volunteer. Tell me that we can't win this.
I think we can win it. Now, let me ask you, with all of those qualifications that you just gave us, I think I have an answer to our whole drug problem and part of our border problem here. I came up a long time ago with the idea of Liberty Villages, which is just ranches like Casey had that had military on it, veterans on it, and growing your own food, generating your own energy. But that's not all of it. We really need to understand that we're in a war, and we don't have anyone. There's no one backing the sheriffs up. There's no one backing the law enforcement up, and there's nobody backing up the farmers and ranchers who are vulnerable out there.
Agreed. Now, the whole idea between the rancher and ranch rescue was a private contract. We would go in there, we would say, you don't have to pay us anything, but just provide us a place to get clean water and give us access to your land. And we'll waive any liability against each other. And that's why ranch rescue worked. But if you want to expand this concept to giving arrest and detention powers to a state-sanctioned military force, you're expanding it beyond the private contract between the volunteer and the landowner. In order to make that work, it has to be a state-sanctioned force. It has to have command and control, and it has to have a mechanism of enforcing discipline.
Otherwise, you're no more than a gang yourself.
Well, even a gang would be a better choice than what we had with ranch rescue, because gangs have their own method of enforcing discipline within the unit. We never had that within ranch rescue. We couldn't say, we're going to beat you up because you didn't follow orders. We couldn't do that. We couldn't say we're going to charge you with dereliction of duty because you left your post. We couldn't do that either. So you had a lot of guys who were showing up saying, well, I'm going to do my own thing now that I've been with you for 5 minutes. I think I know everything. and they would just go off on their own tangent. Well, we can't have that if we're going to have an effective military force. We need command and control, and we need a mechanism of enforcing discipline in the field. So, written into SB 1083 is the adoption of what amounts to an equivalent to the Uniform Code of Military Justice as applied specifically to State Defense Force soldiers. State Defense Force soldier may not be paid, but if he swears an oath and he signs on the dotted line that he's going to obey the orders of those officers and NCOs appointed above him, he darn well better do it, or he's going to be facing charges in the state court.
Now let me ask you, are you getting any coverage on this from your state TV, local radio?
Zip. Nada. Not a thing. Not a single blurb. It's hard to even find any reference to the bill on any news outlet, local, regional, or national. It's been utterly ignored and buried in the news cycle.
All right. Well, I intend to bring this to the attention since you've got the emails there for all the legislators. I think the next letter I go out will have this show featured, and we've got 3 segments. We'll put this up on YouTube. And I've always had a challenge. You know, you say I'm a racist. You say I'm anti-Semitic. You say I'm anti-government. Well, I disagree. I think I'm the most pro-government guy you got out there. I just want the constitutional republic guaranteed me by the Constitution.
I just want the government to do its job. I'm not anti-government. I am, however, anti-incompetence.
Well, as James Forrestal said you know, they're not just stupid. If they were just stupid occasionally, they'd make a mistake in our favor.
It is staggering levels of incompetence, and the urge to manage from behind that I object to.
Okay, here's the question I was going to. I've only got a couple of minutes left on this. I said I could solve the whole problem. Abolish all the laws against victimless crimes, and if you want to smoke pot, grow it in your backyard. The drug dealing ends, the profit margin ends, and we save $50,000 a year from putting somebody in jail for something they had in their pocket. How about that? Is a solution.
Well, I will leave that to people far more involved and with a vested interest in that. I have no opinion one way or the other about the legalization of marijuana. Now, that may place me in a position of tacitly supporting the legalization of it, since I don't oppose the criminalization of it. But I'll tell you one thing, Clay.
Yes, sir.
The courts have spoken, and Arizona's medical marijuana law is now going into full effect. So, you know, happy days for the folks who want to take advantage of the medicinal benefits of a product that grows out of the ground. Now, that works for everybody. That works for everybody but me. I'm sorry, but go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead. I will make a distinction between the herbs that grow in the ground and the stuff that comes out of chemistry test tubes. Methamphetamine is a real big problem. I have yet to see anybody who smokes too much dope get involved in the kind of things that people who smoke meth get involved in. That is a real danger, and 90% of that meth comes across our border from Mexico.
Yes. And so does the cocaine, and so does the heroin. I mean, my God, our troops, our National Guard is guarding opium poppy fields in Afghanistan, Jack. And then they're putting it on military planes and flying it in here so they can put Americans in jail for something they brought in. This is to me, this is insanity. To me, it's a police state. If a man with a badge can walk up and go, "What do you got in your pocket, son?" You know, to me, that's a police state. But listen, I appreciate